this horrific experience, and it is a sacrifice for all of them. No one is exempted. Nibley masterfully puts this all together. The one thing I loved about him is his insights, and his depth and breadth was so powerful that you can't help but be overwhelmed. I mean, wow. Who could think like this? This is the value, this is the utter beauty of Hugh Nibley's materials. Whether you agree with him or not is irrelevant. Well, the sacrifice of Sarah, and we have the sacrifice of Isaac. They're a perfect companion piece to the sacrifice of Abraham on the altar. Isaac, now, the legends say that Isaac was a spitting image of Abraham, right down to the gray hairs. It's kind of interesting how the Jews pull all this together. Abraham and Isaac are bound to each other with extraordinary intimacy, according to a recent commentator. The traditions regarding the one are not to be distinguished from those concerning the other. Both men leave home to wander. Both of these great men go to Egypt, and both of them are promised endless posterity and certain lands as their inheritance. What's been overlooked is the truly remarkable resemblance between Isaac on the altar and Abraham on the altar. And this is one of the great insights, I believe, that makes Hugh Nibley so fabulously worth reading. He goes through the various arguments on how in both stories much is made of the preparation, the gathering of the wood for the Holocaust. And this Holocaust, of course, just simply doesn't occur in either situation, not either with Abraham or with Isaac now. And the record, Abraham is commanded to take now thy son and offer him as a burnt offering. Did you realize that? That's very interesting, isn't it? In the pseudo-Philo, he cries, I offer thee now as a holocaust. And so accordingly he bound Isaac his son, he laid him on the altar in the wood, and sometimes described as a veritable tower, interestingly enough. This is the same type of structure that Nimrod built for Abraham to be thrown into the fire also, and the legends make a big whoop-de-doo about this. Well, on 322 now, Isaac escapes from the flames in the same way that Abraham does. And this is interesting. Well, the original motive requires a fire. And this is the play on words of the Ur of the Chaldees. Ur is a play on words of the fire as well as the city. Interestingly, for all of this particular emphasis on the fire, the sacrificial fire, what receives the most commentary is the knife. And this is the instrument of execution, of course. Remember in facsimile number 1, Abraham on the altar, according to the explanation in our book of Abraham, the priest has that knife. So see, this knife is in both stories also. Abraham and Isaac. Same thing. This is a ritual repeated event. Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. This is Genesis 22:10. It was always the custom to slaughter, that is, zavach, the victim, and then burn the remains to ashes. The blood must be shed, and the offering never struggles in the flames. And many stories tell how the knife was miraculously turned aside as it touched Isaac's throat. Or a protective copper collar was suddenly found around the victim's neck. And sometimes the knife becomes soft lead, and so on. There's all kinds of interesting, fun midrash. Being bound on the altar, Abraham, as the book of Abraham and the legends report, he was constantly praying fervently, of course. And this is the same prayer offered by Isaac now on his altar. Though in this case it was Isaac who was in the mortal peril, it was again Abraham who uttered the prayer for deliverance. It's Abraham for whom the angels are concerned. He is the one that the covenant was made with, you see. Even though it is the life of Isaac that it's in mortal danger, everything seems to hark back to the original sacrifice, the sacrifice of Abraham. In both sacrificial stories, an angel comes to the rescue, and this is because it was rather abrupt, immediate response here to the prayer. At the same time, we read that the voice of God was heard in the heaven also. And this goes back to Genesis 22, where the angel of the Lord conveys to Abraham the words of God. But the angel is speaking in the first person, you see. And the angel of the Lord said, By myself have I sworn, saith the Lord. And here's how the rabbis explain this. They say God makes a sign to the Metatron, who in turn calls out to Abraham. Now this is interesting. They mentioned Metatron. Metatron was Enoch in the book of Enoch, in the pseudepigraphic books of Enoch. So Enoch is involved with this. Or another account says the Almighty hastened to send his voice from above, saying, Do not slay your son. An angel comes to the rescue the infant in the cave when Abraham's mother gave him up for dead. He left him in a cave at one point. This same angel is the same angel involved in rescuing the child Abraham from the soldiers. And here's what the angel says. He says, Do not fear, because the Almighty One will deliver thee from the hands of thine enemies. You see, God is fighting Israel's battles, beginning with Abraham. This same angel delivered him first from starvation in prison, and then from death in the flames. So this angel's keeping track of Abraham. See, this is a very important, pivotal figure in the history of the patriarchs. I mean, it begins with Abraham. It's pretty impressive stuff. Michael is told by God, actually in one of these accounts, Michael is told by God, What are you doing here? You better rush down there and stop Abraham from sacrificing Isaac, because he's going to do it. So Michael comes roaring down and he yells, Whoa, Abraham, Abraham, what art thou doing? And Abraham, you can just picture Abraham. He looks up startled and he goes, Well, for Pete's sake, who tells me to stop? Now, this is interesting. A heavenly being comes down and commands him and asks him, What are you doing? And Abraham stops and goes, Who is telling me to stop? A messenger sent from the Lord, says Michael. But Abraham says, Listen, the Almighty himself commanded me to offer my son to him. Only he can countermand the order. I will not hearken to any messenger. And so in this particular story, God himself then has to come down and personally intervene to save Isaac. That is how determined Abraham is to be righteous, by trying to keep these commandments, even though they are outrageously contradictory, extremely problematical. He doesn't give a hoot. He says, I have been commanded, I'm going to go do this. When a messenger... Now you got to realize, Michael, this is the Archangel Michael, folks. This is the big gun of the Bene Elohim, the sons of God, in the Adat Elohim, in the council of the gods. This is the big gun. Michael the Archangel himself. And when he shows up to Abraham, does Abraham